Are you?
Yes. Yeah.
We are now living in a world of hyper connectivity. We can say we are in the age of hyper connectivity where information is available, information is plenty. There is no shortage of information. Right? Information is very much abundant, and the influence of social media, especially the reviews that we do, that we undergo, the kind of influencing that we are undergoing. People are there around us to influence. Lot amount of influence of the online communities, correct? So these are becoming very very powerful, and what is happening is basically we do have a lot of information. In fact, it is not a lot of information; it is information overload these days. See, the same idea is conveyed by different people, different ways, and different perspectives, and we ourselves will sometimes undergo different identities because the way people are known through different ways, through different channels. See, our identities sometimes become more fluid. We can say different personas, and the word persona, where the personality has come, is known as a mask, or the real meaning of persona is mask. So in fact we are also switching our identities different times. Even the boundaries are becoming very very blurred. If you see your private life or public life, that is how the influence of social media is coming. That includes different postings about our personal life. Ultimately personal life becomes a public life, right? Anything around us are available. For example, data about our habits, and these days if you see, things are listening to us through different behaviors, through different avenues such as voice and our locations also, right? So we all are tracked, our preferences are known. So that is where the things around us become more personalized. For example, if someone understands my behavior, my habit, they can give a personalized kind of a offering, customized offerings or personalized offerings. So one way we can say a lot amount of things are becoming simplified, but at the same time there are questions of privacy and security concerns, right? And we are also compelled to be in a participative behavior. When I say participative behavior, the social connections and the risk associated with the social connections are also increasing. This is a shared economy, right? Shifting from individual ownership to access, where people post their status, how they feel. So in a nutshell, our personalities are also changing, our responsibilities are also changing due to the influence of hyperconnectivity. So you must be thinking, today I'm talking about hyper-connected world and its influences. No, I'm talking about the relevance of our scriptures. Issues that we see in the modern life, these all are codified 5,000 years back. And the solutions are also there. These kind of issues can come, and how to deal with those issues. That is where the relevance of Bhagavad Gita comes. And the solutions in our scriptures that will fit the, or will resolve the problems that we are facing in modern life. And when we say the issues in modern life, it doesn't mean that these issues came up only during the modern time. These issues are very much inherent in human beings. And in the modern world, it is very apt to say health and mental well-being. When we say health, probably we may say the lifespan is increasing, but we have to see the quality of mental health, the mental well-being. I was reading one of the articles in Times of India. I think it came 2 days back. Among the adolescents, typically in the 10 to 19 years old in India, a good amount of that population, that is 16% or more than that, in the adolescents, show an elevated triglyceride level. When I say triglyceride level, elevated LDL and triglyceride in the young children. And the after effect of this, probably it can lead to hardening of the arteries. That will also raise the risk of heart disease or a stroke in later part of the life. And the article was also saying the different breakup of this percentage across different Indian states. I was surprised to see that West Bengal around 67%. And it is there everywhere, all the parts of India. So this is basically kind of an alarming kind of numbers. The reasons were not really stated, but it is very natural for us to understand. The reasons could be unhealthy diet and the urbanization, especially. Everybody is busy. Nobody is able to find time for the self-upgradation. Very much of a sedentary lifestyle. These days, if you see, the playgrounds are empty. How many of the children are going and playing? I'm not saying nobody is playing, but the numbers. And the bigger fact, the loneliness that kids are having, despite the hyper connectivity. See now how the loneliness are addressed through these gadgets. They all are in their own world, right? And if you see the connectivity, when you say hyper connectivity, the loneliness is a major issue for all age groups. Because again, moving to nuclear family, and so urbanization, sedentary lifestyle, even nutrient deficiencies can also be something where we live in the world of fast food, and no one wants to do any hard work in terms of cooking and anything. Actually, that is where the world is moving. And also the influence of the media, as I mentioned, social media, over reliance on external validation, right? See, we look at others reels posting and things like that, and we also feel that they all are real. So what happens is basically we rely too much on the external things, over reliance on external validation. So what happens is basically these all things will lead to a low self-esteem. So health and mental well-being is a major issue, and there are many other reasons also. For example, as I mentioned, the nuclear family as well as the community breakdown has happened. And if you see the intergenerational ties, grandparent to children to grandchildren, the weaker interrelational, I would say the intergenerational, the weaker intergenerational ties, there is no bonding. Bonding is coming down day by day. Also, the erosion of the traditional support systems. Traditional support systems, especially the grandparents taking care of the grandchildren. So the communities are becoming fragmented. All nuclear families, and I think beyond nuclear families, I don't know, subnuclear families are also coming these days. So the in the community breakdown, the weak intergenerational ties, the economic pressure, inequality, debt burdens, a lot of consumerism based approach. See, when we see in our day-to-day life, we are consuming a lot. How many we are producing? What amount of things we ourselves are producing? This is a question that we all have to ask. Plus the influence of social media, as I mentioned, the polarization of the content, the skewness happening towards the external things are fine, the external things are good, so others are well off. So now that brings a question in all of us towards our own identity. What is the real meaning of myself? And the declination of the shared values are happening. Moral anchoring is not happening. And if you see city life, work, 5 to 6 days of work, plus the amount of time that we all spend on the roads, right? So at some point this question will come: what is the real purpose beyond my career? And so we all see only the worldly living. Everybody is busy, and right, this is how things are going on. So a lot amount of stress, lot amount of anxiety, lot amount of overthinking also happens, right? What will happen? What would be the kind of competition? Social media pressure, and even the biggest aspect is the fear of missing out, FOMO. Will I be cornered, right, if I miss this? These are some of the practical issues we all are facing. I'm not saying this is only for certain people, which I am not included. No, everybody is included in this. That's where Bhagavan Krishna gives all these nicer advices. Focus on doing your duty with full sincerity. Karma mas karma yoga, right? And you mentally forget about the results because you don't have a control on those things. Surrender and execute your work. When you say surrender and execute the work, it is impliedly saying you detach from the outcomes because you don't know what is going to come. That itself will give a big stress reduction. This detachment. When I say detachment, it is not again running away, because nobody can detach and do that work actually. See, it is all about not thinking, not worried, not having the anxiety about the results. These things will happen if you are putting the right actions, obviously you should get the right results, but you don't need to really depend upon that at upfront for you to be happy. Let that happen, because you don't have a control on the unpredictable outcomes, and you are no longer tied to those unpredictable outcomes. This is where karma yogam comes as a big savior. You recognize the higher purpose. When we say every karma yogam is for mental upliftment or mental purity, you recognize the higher purpose beyond the self-centered activities or the selfish goals. What will I get? To how this action will benefit others as well. So align the personal work, all our work as a service with for a larger cause, for a betterment of a broader set of people. In Sanskrit, this term is Loka Sangraha, welfare of the world. So such a purpose-driven living brings lot of inner fulfillment. Otherwise, it becomes very, very selfish, and you depend upon the outcomes for you to be happy. And outcomes may come good, may not come good. It's going to be always anxiety driven. So recognize the higher purpose, align the personal work towards the betterment of a larger set of people, Loka Sangraha. And that will bring the inner fulfillment and the contentment in life. In the 4th chapter, Bhagavan says, the yogam got deteriorated. I gave this knowledge to Vivaswan, Manu, Ikshvaku. Later, what happened is basically, evam parambara praptam imam rajarshyo vidu sakale neha mahada yogo nishta paranda. In the Jnanakarma Sannyasa Yoga, 2nd verse. And in the 5th chapter, Bhagavan again says in the 11th verse, Kayena manasa buddhya kevalairindriyairapi yogina karma kurvanti sangam tyakta atmashuddhaye. Sangam tyaktva atmashuddhaye. For the atmashuddhi, one has to give up the sangam. Attachment and addiction one has to give up. So when that has not happened, as per Bhagavan, evam parambara praptam imam rajarshyo vidu. So all these rajarshis like Janaka, etc., did that, but over a period of time, this yoga has got deteriorated. Why? Because the attachment and addiction become very prominent. People become the slaves of their mind. Mental slavery to the worldly substances and relationships happen. And in the last session, we have seen this, verse number 62 and 63. Dhyayado vishayan pupsa sangasteshu vajayade sangat samjayade kama kamat krodho bhijayade krodat bhavati sammohat smriti vibhramaha smriti bhramshad buddhi nashad pranashyati. Basically the padana krama. Attachment, addiction, ultimately becoming the mental slavery, and the perishing, complete collapse of an individual who is having uncontrolled desires and senses taking control of the mind. And we have seen it's a padana krama. It is a domino effect. It is a kind of a spiral or a whirlpool that creates a domino effect, right? Attachment, then attachment leads to desires. Desires, if not getting fulfilled, will trigger anger, and that anger will go towards clouding the judgment, or it creates the delusion. And that delusion, that clouding will create a buddhinash, confused memory. Buddhinashat pranashyati. Ultimately, the destruction of reasoning will happen. Confused memory leading to the deficit, or destruction of the reasoning, and ultimately the individual will collapse, will perish. So what one has to do is basically practice the self-discipline, indriya nigraha. When we say indriya nigraha, it is all about moderation, bringing moderation in life, moderation in everything that we do, be it eating, be it sleeping, be it consuming anything, be it entertainment. So that is where the sthita prajnatam comes into picture. Balance in life. So we all hear about work-life balance, balancing the work and life. So in fact, the life is the single thread that acts in work or in our day-to-day life, whether it's personal life or professional life or family life. What is the common thread? Our life, we individuals. And due to the hyper connected world and its influences, we all are in the process of endless multitasking. That is where the burnout happens. So endless multitasking, and we are trying to get the excellence out of these multitasking. Correct. Endless burnout will happen ultimately, because multitasking with the aim of getting results will create a vicious cycle. That's where Bhagavan says in the 50th verse, 2nd chapter, Yoga Karma Sugaushala Buddhi Yukto Jahadiha Ube Sukrata Dushkrute Tasmad Yogaya Ujjaswa Yoga Karma Sugaushala. The skill in action. What is the skill? We should be free from the karmic bondage. You do your work with, do it with dexterity, do it with clarity, do it with excellence. Think more about the quality rather than the amount or magnitude or quantity of the work. So the quality of the work, when we say quality, quality is all about not creating the stains of the karma. Ragam, dvesham, kartrutvam, bhoktrutvam. Enjoyership, doership, attachment and aversion. That is where one creates efficiency in the work. See, when we say yoga, karmasu, kaushala, karma ultimately needs an action. Outward action is needed, right? Even if you have to write, if you have to speak, we need an external execution. You all agree with me, right? So an outer execution is needed for any work. And when we say efficiency in work, yoga karma sukha kaushala, what decides the quality of the outer execution? What decides the quality of the outer execution? What will be logically deciding the quality of outer execution?
Your involvement
Your involvement. So from where that comes? Where would be the roots?
comes from your mind.
Coming from the inner plane. Right. So the internal quality of thinking, the superior quality of thinking will create profound results in an external manner, in an external form. The quality of thoughts, quality of emotions will ultimately get reflected in the quality of the actions which is outward. So that is where the inner enrichment, I would say qualitative inner enrichment is needed. And our thinking should be always towards making our mind better, broader, and purer. Mental thinking or the involvement of the mind should be in such a way that the mind will start thinking broader, thinking better, thinking purer. Karma yoga is all about this inner, qualitative inner enrichment. First and foremost, you have the mindset of surrendering. Then you depend upon the prasada buddhi, not bothering much about the final results. Do the actions neatly, cleanly. While you do the action, have the inner clarity that you are doing the work for a broader schema of people. And any action that I am doing is only for purifying myself without accumulating the karma vasanas, make my mind broader, better, purer. In that process, what happens? The mind will always be connected to the higher source, what is beyond and behind the mind, where the mind stands. In the Kenopanishad, you can see Srotrasya Srotram Manaso Manoyat Vajo Vajam. So Pranasya Prana. So what is behind the mind, where the mind is standing? So that is where the mind will start connecting to the higher source, where it is depending upon. So that is where the Shruti always says you should have the pravritti and nivritti, the path of activity and path of detachment or path of contemplation, and derive the energy from the path of contemplation or path of detachment, path of the inner qualitative enrichment. From there you derive the energy and spend, not from the things that we gather from the outside, not from the things that we expect at the end. Otherwise also from the inner realm one has to gain this energy. So that is where the pravritti nivritti should be combined. So karma yogam is a schema where one blends the pravritti and nivritti. And this is not just a pravritti, the path of activity rooted in the path of detachment or contemplation. Not just living the life at the periphery of the world. Because if we live in the periphery of the world, then the world will take us for a toss. Not just live on the periphery in the sense at the worldly plane. And that is not our personality. Our worldly plane is not the real personality. Because worldly plane constitutes of only worldly things. That is where I was mentioning in the beginning. The personas or the scheme of things are changing, because social media plane to professional plane to the social plane. So that is where we assume personalities are different planes. We have to transact in those planes. I am not saying that we cannot or we need to run away, but the real enrichment should come from within, not from those objects. So when the mind is in a spree of growth, becoming broader, becoming purer, becoming cleaner, it starts connecting with the real intellect within. It starts connecting with the truth, rather than becoming the level of evolution so called as being. See, otherwise if you see in the modern world, the issues, again, conflicts are there. Conflicts are too much these days. Intolerance is there. Polarization. When I say polarization, different perspectives, we are able to see all those information is available in the world easily. So when conflict comes, when intolerance comes, when polarization comes, what is the way forward? Only way forward is basically cultivate equanimity in life, cultivate empathy in life. And these differences will come. Obviously, when we interact with people, people will have different perspectives. They will view things differently. But I respect that. View differences as it is. And in your inner plane, understand that they all are superficial. What is really mattering is basically I myself, the true core, the true self. So if you see that, this attitude will, diffuse the hostility, will ease out the enmity. This is not a philosophy. This is what Bhagavad Gita says. This is a prajnan or a yogi or a muni. Prajahadi yada kaman sarvan partha manogadan atmanyevatmana tushta sthita prajnastadochyade. The one who is always aware of his or her own true nature is always joyful. That person has already understood that the self is the embodiment of the happiness. That self is the embodiment of fullness. That self is the embodiment of the perfection that I am trying to see from the outside. That yogi's mind always operate from that core, through that easiness, through that beingness. Mind will never drift away from the core, though the mind is needed to operate for the external things, but the mind will never be at the periphery of those objects or senses. Otherwise also the modern world, if you see, the fear of changes is very, very dominant these days. Fear of changes. What will happen? Especially the AI, the advent of AI. What will happen? How the jobs would look like? What will I do? Anxiety about the future. Again, anxiety about the health also. Right? We all know that whatever we eat are not pure. And again, we do have limitations for spending money for organic food, because the organic is also very, very expensive these days, into 5 times, into 6 times. What would be my future? Anxiety about the future, anxiety about the health, anxiety about aging, anxiety about the mortality, anxiety about the financial aspects. So that is where Bhagavan says, don't worry, you take a break. You should know your true self. Knowledge on the self will help you. Meditate on that. Meditate on that self, where that self is the eternal truth. You start seeing yourself as beyond the body, first and foremost lesson. That itself will reduce the existential fear. All those slokas in the beginning of 2nd chapter. All advices to Arjuna. You are the Dehi, not the Deham. See the amount of courage that one will get. That creates the very profound courage to act. This is the courage that Bhagavan is giving to Arjuna. You get that courage and act. This is a very uncertain time for you, Arjuna. Right? So you don't bring your personal choices here, Arjuna, because your build is to do the fight, to do the war. So you go with your personal integrity, you be selfless here and focus on the service. And your decision making, let it be grounded in dharma, ethical principles, nothing nothing out of your ethics. This will only sustain a long term advantage, not only in Arjuna, for all of us. And you be the role model. Bhagavan says in the third chapter, yad acharadi shrestha tat tat eva idaro jana sayat pramanam gurute logas tadanuvartate. So you do the acharana. Dharmam is all about, acharadi iti dharma. You have to do that. You have to execute it. You have to show. All our decision making should be grounded in dharma, ethical principles. You act with personal integrity. You be selfless. You be clear about yourself. With that self-knowledge, with the service orientation, convert karmam to karma yoga. And you show. You become a role model. You just execute. So such people who execute will be followed by others. Sayat pramanam kurute. Hey Guru Shrestha, you follow that, logam will follow you. Logas tadanu vartade. It's applicable to all of us. So all modern day problems, if you see, these all, if you see, Vyasa Bhagavan has seen these issues. Stress, anxiety is very, very prevalent these days. What is the way forward? Verse number 47. Karmanyevadhigaraste ma phaleshu gatacha. Decouple duty and attachment from the same thing, right? You decouple it. What will happen? What will happen? While you have to do the work, you are thinking about the results. You just decouple it. Your anxiety will come down. Your fear of failure will come down. You decouple duty and attachment. Again, the question of lack of purpose. What am I doing? Same thing, same boring job. And what will I do if this is continuing? See, life is a flow, because when you say work-life balance and all those new age things, understand that it's only one thing, life. And the life is a flow. You bring the service orientation there, because life is a flow. You have to think about a broader set of people, right? Because what is the common thread? Life is the common thread in any realm. So you have a broader commitment, make life as a service, life as a flow, then that lack of purpose will get settled. Again, attachment and addiction. I need it, I want it, I have to get this. Others are having. Have sense control here. That is where Siddha Prajna Lakshanam comes. Moderation in life. Because sometimes, one analogy we should use in life. When we go to a big mall, you can see a lot of things there. The mall is filled with different things. Personally, we have to say that, yeah, this is for the consumption of many people, not only for me. So you need to have sense control in life. You need to have moderation in life. Again, the imbalances in life, right? Work life, relationships. Everywhere, it's very difficult actually. That is where you should have skill in life. Yoga, karma, sukha, dexterity in action. Again, in personal, professional space, conflict, intolerances comes. That is where Bhagavan says, Samatvam yoga uchyate, equanimity, empathy. When you understand that the same self is acting in everybody, a different perspective, etc., that's fine. They all are superficial. I mean, we don't need to deny that by saying, but accept it. But in our inner plane, understand that those things are superficial. What matters is only my true self. So then that samatvam will come, equanimity will come, empathy will come. Problems of fear and uncertainty, yeah, fear will come in anybody. So overcome by what? Understand first and foremost, I'm not the body. The true self is eternal. Crisis will come. Crisis will come every day. Career growth issues, many things will come. Right. So what is that we need to follow? Dharmic way of life. With this knowledge, lead by example. So Bhagavan says, trust your conscience. Trust your conscience. So our discussion started with the hyper connected world. So information is abundant. Lot amount of confusions and chaos are created by this digital world. We cannot run away. What we have to do? Choose the communities wisely. See, when I say community, digital detoxification is also is a nicer way. So we should be very clear. Our communities where we are or we deal with, ensure that we get uplifted, not getting agitated through those communities. That's where our Shastram says Satsangam. Satsangate Nisangatvam, Nisangate Nirmohatvam, Nirmohate Nischalatatvam, Nischalatatve Jivanmukti. Company of the wise, company of Sat, company of communities, that includes individuals also, that includes many things, that will uplift us, that will not agitate us, that will not let us down. That is what is needed. Let's go with the first verse of today, verse number 66. Nasti buddhirayuktasya na chayuktasya bhavana na cha bhavayada shanti ashandasya kutas sukham. Nasti buddhi ayuktasya na cha ayuktasya bhavana na cha bhavayatah shantihi ashandasya kutas sukham. So here ayukta, you can see this term ayuktan in two places in the first line. Nasti buddhi ayuktasya na cha ayuktasya bhavana. Who is ayuktan? Ayuktan is the one without having self-control. Without having self-control and no idea about who am I. So for such a person who is not having self-control, there is no steadfast intellect. There is no steadfast intellect, nor is there a contemplation or meditation. So without this, how that individual can be peaceful, how that individual can be happy without the peace. So here the scattered mind is not allowing for a one-pointed attention. So that person will be an unsteady individual as per Bhagavad Gita. That person will be a distracted person. That distracted person will not get a meditative mindset. And such person who is not having, that person who is distracted and not having a meditative mindset will not have peace. And if there is no peace, how that person will enjoy happiness in life? Ashandasya kudasukham. So what is needed? Abidance in the true self. Atmanishta is needed. Atmanishta is needed. So mind is not operated from the true self. An individual whose mind is not operated from the true self is called as ayuktan here. A person whose mind is not connected to that true self, A person whose mind is not operating from the true self is called as ayuktan, ayukta. So then what is the opposite of ayuktan? Yuktan. Who is a yuktan? Yukta is or a yogi is a person whose mind is operating from the self, whose mind is consistently connected to the self. In that scenario, what happens? Mind doesn't operate as a separate entity. Yuktan is a wise person. So for a yuktan, what happens? The power of self, the power of the truth operates that mind. The mind is not operated by the world in a yuktan. The mind is operated through the power of the self. And the power of the self will bring the mind closer to that. And the power of the self brings closer to the center and make the mind abide in that. What happens in this scenario? The buddhi will become steady. And the knowledge will get gained in that individual. That's where it says, bhavana, nacha yuktasya bhavana, nacha abhavayada shanti. Right. Here, bhavana meaning the parabhakti. And ayuktan is one who is not tuned to the self. So for an ayuktan, without a bhavana, what happens is basically the intellect, the scattered mind and the intellect will never allow to gain this knowledge. And there is no peace. And for such a person, where is the happiness then? There is no question of an individual being happy who is an ayuktan. So in the yuktan, in the case of a jnani, the power of Atman, power of the self, will start controlling the mind. And that mind will start embracing that self automatically or naturally. That mind will abide in that self. And it will happen through constant practice. It is not something like, it will happen overnight. And through constant practice, that mind gets adjusted to stay in that higher plane. Bhagavan in the last chapter, he says, Tameva sharanam gaccha sarva bhavena bharata tat prasadat param shantim sthanam prapsyasi shashvatam. Here, bhavena bharata, sarva bhavena bharata, tameva sharanam gaccha. With that surrender, through that surrender, the grace of that Lord, grace of the Brahman, grace of the self will take you to the abode of absolute peace. Sthanam prapsyasi shashvadam tat prasadat param shantim. So, we need to understand this. We will start with the body as a center. Then we will think about senses as a center. Then we will think about mind as a center. Then we will think about buddhi as a center. We will never get settled in any of these centers. Ultimately, the self, the experience of the self. And it is very logical also. Our experiences, day by day, night by night, year over year, our experiences is happening at that self. And that self is unchanging. So, Yuktan is the one who has understood this truth. Yuktan is the one who has understood that I am not the body. I am not a body with the control of senses. Yuktan is the one who has traversed all these layers, body centers, so called as the body center to sense center to mind center to buddhi center to the core center, so called as the self. So a yuktan is the one whose buddhi has become steady. There the heart opens. It is not the physical heart I am saying. Then the knowledge of the self will be free flowing. That experience, that is the experience of infinitude called as the Shanti, Sukham, Samadhi. At that point, the Jiva Bhavam disappears, the sense of individual existence disappears. That is where the real Advaita Jnanam flows. So here, this verse basically says, for an ayuktan, where is the question of happiness? A lack of self-control, with a restless mind, no steady wisdom coming, no meditation, there will not be any peace and there will not be any happiness. So ayuktan is the one whose mind is scattered, whose senses are uncontrolled. So here when we say senses, including our digital distractions. So we need to have digital self-control. This is another dimension we have to add in the modern age. Because these digital distractions, again, if you see, no focus, scrolling, trolling from one place to another place. See, that is where our span of attention is also very less these days. That is where we cannot focus. If we cannot focus, then where is the question of creativity? If we cannot focus, where is the question of calm? Because we are restless. If there is no focus, if there is no calmness in mind, then where is the question of joy coming? And in the modern world, it is very easy. We can see. These days, what I have seen is basically, those who operate the phone in the morning, especially listening to some Vedantic talks, YouTube videos, etc. Especially before 6 o'clock, what happens? I am seeing, in my case also, I am seeing some ads coming in the YouTube video, basically saying that the meditation cushion, because the media is also sensing that he's a morning person, he must be doing meditation or doing some jogging or doing something similar to that. So I am wondered to see that some ads are coming these days. This is a very good cushion for doing meditation. That's okay. You can buy, if you can afford to buy big good cushions, it's okay. But don't meditate with the smartphone. Either it has to be in aeroplane mode or don't keep the smartphone here. You can have any cushion, no issue. So practice of self-control is needed. Habits such as even digital detoxification, mindfulness in everywhere, mindfulness in eating, mindful eating, mindful behaviors, and on the top of all those things, regular routines are really needed. Because this is a very agile world, right? We may think that routines are not needed, but routines will help us. So, where is the question of happiness for the one who is not having peace within, where there is no meditative mindset within, where the intellect is not building steady wisdom, the mind is restless, there is no knowledge of self, forget about all those things, lack of self-control also, mind is taking control here. Ashandasya kudasugham. So you become a yuktan, you become a sthita prajna, you become a yogi. Verse number 67. Indriyanam hi charatam yanmano anuvidhiyate tadasya haradi prajna vayurnavamivambhasi. Indriyanam hi charatam yad mana anuvidhiyate tad asya haradi prajnam Vayuhu navam iva ambhasi. So when the mind is controlled by the roaming senses, again the analogy of a boat is brought here in this verse. It carries away one's wisdom. When the mind is chasing or mind is always after the roaming senses, the wisdom of that person is just carried away like the wind sweeps a boat off its course on the water. Simple thing. Temptation of the wandering senses, and if the mind is going after those temptations of the wandering senses, what will happen is it will carry away one's discriminative capability. It will take away the, what is the capability? Nitya Anitya Vastu Vivegam. You will be always going after things in the world. Mind carried away by the roaming senses will sweeps away the understanding and discrimination in an individual. See here, if you see Arjuna's crisis, it comes from where? It comes from the disconnect between his scattered mind and his weakened intellect. This is the case of Arjuna. Comes from a disconnect between the restless mind, the scattered mind, and the weak intellect. So here, the turbulent mind, we need to understand the turbulent mind of an individual is compared as a boat that is guided by a wind, where the wind takes control of the boat. Very simple. Siddhaprajnan or yogi will have control of the mind, and a person who is ayuktan will have a turbulent mind, where the world will guide that mind. So instead of yogi, that person will become bhogi. Okay, verse number 68. Tasmad yasya mahabaho nigrahitani sarvasha indriyani indriyarthebhya tasya prajna pradishtita. Tasmad yasya mahabaho nigrahitani sarvasha indriyani indriyarthebhya tasya prajna pradishtita. Therefore, O Arjuna, O mighty armed, the wisdom of one whose senses are completely restrained from the sense objects is tasya prajna pradishtita, is firmly established. Whose senses are completely restrained from the sense objects, that person's wisdom is firmly established. Hey Arjuna, please understand that the true stability in an individual will come only through sense control, through conscious sense control, through conscious sense and mind control. When we say mental health and all those things in the modern world, this is the first and foremost thing. When we say the triglyceride levels are high and all those things, we need to understand that the onus is on an individual to make a healthy body. These options are there. Healthy body, making a healthy body versus going after the cravings to the sugar. The option is given. But we cannot attain both. What has to be there? Master the senses, mind. Then the steady wisdom will happen. That stability will happen. That stability will bring peace and happiness. We can say this is a very ancient hack in the modern world, where modern world is, you're having issues of health, mental well-being, emotional stability. fear of missing out, many things. This is a very simple wisdom from the Indian scriptures, from Bhagavad Gita. One has to bring attention and inner power. Manage your senses, manage your mind, manage your senses for managing your destiny. Simple. Manage your senses and mind for managing your destiny. So, what has to happen? Two things: mastery of mind and senses, and knowledge. Both should go hand in hand. One should have inquiry: who am I? What is my true nature? Am I this body, mind, intellect, senses? Then should have a proper attitude, here referred as the Karma Yoga, Sthita Prajnatvam. Very, very simple. What is the source and basis of our experience? If we have an answer, and if that answer is saying that that source and basis of experience comes from within, then the progress is upward. Source and basis of my experience is coming from within, not from outside, on the right track. Though that knowledge is there, what happens is basically the taste of experience is primarily colored by our mind and impressions. And even if you are stuck at that plane, it is very difficult. Because we need to understand that, right? I was reading a neuroscience paper, and that paper was saying, neuroscience, that paper was saying the perception is constructed. Perception is constructed. What is the meaning here? So in that paper, if I recollect, the author says the brain predicts and interprets the incoming signals. Let's try to simplify. Assume that two of us are watching a movie. The same movie, the same film we are watching. And is it natural that we can have an opposite emotion? Can it be possible? We have an opposite emotion after or while watching the movie? If so, why it is so? Because when I say, I'm trying to say perception is constructed. Why that opposite emotions are coming? Because our inner frameworks are different. Our inner frameworks are different. That is where Bhagavad Gita is now teaching. Control the inner instrument. When you control the inner instrument, the outward or the outer world will change for you. Yadrishi bhavana yasya siddhir bhavati tadrishi. When you control your inner instrument, the outer world will change automatically for you. So what is the substratum? What is the root? What is the source? The source is the self. Not the mind, where it colors the experiences which are generated at the self. The self is the luminous screen, like a movie screen. It's very clean, it is neat, it is white. And the projections are what? The projections are the colored mind, the sense objects. They all are the projections. So what is the way forward? Only way forward is upgrade, not our gadgets, upgrade our mind. Next verse, Ya nisha sarva bhudanam tasyam jagrati samyami yasyam jagrati bhudani sa nisha pashyato mune. Here Bhagavan says two classes of people. One class is engaged in material activities for the sense gratification. Maybe we can say ayuktan. They depend upon the outside stimuli. And the other class is basically the one who is introspective, who is awake to receive the knowledge and leading or going towards the self realization, knowing the true self. So, in that context, what is a night for a common man or for all the people who are towards the sense gratification? For such people, the night will become a day for a wise person. What is night for all people is a day for a wise person, and vice versa. You may think, oh, how it's possible? Or maybe this person is night out and sleeps during. There's no. Don't go with the literal meaning. Here, the verse refers to Samyami and Laugika. Ordinary people is a Laugikan who are awake to the worldly pleasures and asleep to the higher self. Ordinary people, Laugikan, is always awake to the worldly pleasures and asleep to the higher self. Whereas the Samyami will be what? Samyami will be asleep to the worldly pleasures and awake to the higher self. That is where the Nisha, Ratri and Nisha, Ratri and basically the day and night. See, the yogi or Siddha Prajnan is awake to the self and asleep to the sense objects. It is not literally about a day and night, but it's all about the values and awareness these different people are having. When I say different people, there are two sets. One who does the Atma Anusandhana. So one who does the Atma Anusandhana, for a Laukikan, it will be a night, a Ratri, and it will be a day for a Samyami. And for a person who is a Vishaya Saktan, or the Vishaya Sakta Chittam, Vishayam, material, worldly things. For a Samyami, it will be night, and for a Laukika, it is a day. Both live in two different planes. So who is a Samyami? Who is a Muni? Who is a Muni here? Pashyado Mune. Muni is the one who is absorbed. The absorbed one is awake to the effulgence that is there within. Bhagavan in Srimad Bhagavatam, Sada Nirasta Kuhagam Satyam Param Dhimahi. Awake to that effulgence. Samyami is the one who is absorbed or awake to that effulgence. So what is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled, and the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective Muni or the sage. So they both live in two different planes. So the choice is given to us how to live in this world, to be absorbed in that effulgence of the self, or getting absorbed into the worldly objects. The choice is given to us to become a yogi or a bhogi. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.